Jai Hind, everybody. Today we are really privileged to have Dr. Manjari Singh amongst us, who is affiliated with us as a subject matter expert. And you have already heard her during the 24th, 25th July Maritime Seminar. And I'm sure in coming days we'll be hearing more of her. I think when this subject was conceived, that time a lot of things which are now happening were not on the horizon. So it was focusing on the as to how the attack of Israel on Iran, attack of USA in form of midnight hammer on Iran, that affected how the known friends became adversaries and vice versa. And that is a subject where she'll be taking us through. Of course, now there is a major churning, going across the world because of the Trump tariff. And there were reports initially that Prime Minister Modi will not travel to China to attend the SU summit. But now he is going there. Of course, Mr. NSA, Awal, and PM, they have already landed to Russia. So, maybe realignment, maybe preserving of our national interests, a lot of things are happening. So, they're exciting times, but disturbing times as well. Of course, there are also some positive indication of Trump and Putin meeting each other directly sometime in the next week, as is appearing in the open media, to close the issue of Russia-Ukraine conflict. And once that happens, then a lot of things which are in a negative domain maybe done automatically. So without taking much of time, I request Conwar to introduce the speaker, and then ma'am take the deliberations.
Good morning, everyone. I will introduce today's guest lecturer, Dr. Manjari Singh. Dr. Manjari Singh focuses on contemporary West Asian Middle East affairs. She serves as the member core committee at the Greater West Asia Forum, India, initiated in collaboration with the Embassy of Israel in India. She is the author of India and the Gulf, A Security Perspective, Routledge, and also serves as an associate editor of the Journal of World Affairs, Voice of the Global South, Sage Publications. She participated in 5 track dialogues so far, including the recent track 1.5 dialogue on the first multi-stakeholder closed-door talks on IMEC held in November 2024 in Abu Dhabi. Previously, she taught at Amity Institute of International Studies, Amity University, and served as an associate fellow at the Center for Land Warfare Studies. Dr. Singh holds a doctorate from Jawaharlal University in West Asian, Middle Eastern Studies on Sustainable Development in Jordan. Her area of interest includes contemporary Middle East, India-Middle East relations, India-Gulf relations, India's national security, and sustainable development. She is a Ryoichi Sasakawa Young Leaders Fellowship Fund Fellow. Thank you. Now forward to
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak over here on my subject, and thank you to all of you for attending this talk. So I'll be talking about the shifting alliances and realignments in the region itself, not so much about what is happening world over, and what are the implications of the Israel-Iran war that happened in June this year. So I will start with 2 basic questions, and that is where my entire presentation, my entire talk will hover around. The first question is, why is there a hostility between Iran and Israel? And like sir already mentioned, that they were friends in the olden times. So why all of a sudden there is a hostility between the 2 countries? And then the second question, the second important question that is there is, why didn't the Arabs participate in this war? We already saw that there was a normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran that was broken by China in 2023. So why was there no noise? I mean, they were only releasing some statements regarding the escalation of war. But apart from that, they were sitting at the fence. There was nothing happening in the region itself. They were not participating in it. Now, if we have to understand why there is a hostility, why they are sworn enemies, Iran and Israel, we'll have to talk about them back in the history. So if we talk about Iran and Israel, first we talk about how Israel as a country got its independence. So in 1948, when Israel got its independence, similar to what India faced, Israel also had to go to war with the Arab countries, the neighboring Arab countries. So 1948 itself, there was a war happening between the Arabs and the Israelis. So it was understood by Israel, and therefore their doctrine, the war doctrine that they were developing, hovered around this understanding that the Arab neighbors, which are in the core, which are in the proximity of Israel, are hostile. So if the Arab core is hostile, then the periphery will have to be friendly. Similar to what we have in our mandala theory, which is discussed in the Arthashastra, that the Ari, your closest neighbor who shares the border, is going to be your enemy, is not going to be your friend. But your periphery is going to be your friend. So similar to it, what they did was, because Turkey and Iran were there in the periphery already, they were aligned with the US at that point in time. Remember, this is also the time when the Cold War has taken place. So they were already allies to US, Turkey and Iran, and both of them had nothing to do with Jerusalem. Turkey was under the leadership of Kemal Atatürk at that point in time, and Iran was under the rule of Shah of Iran. So at that point in time, they were both aligned with US, and therefore it was more feasible for them to have a understanding. And they were also, both of them had problems with Arabs. Why? Because Arabs had revolted against the Ottoman Empire and helped in the breaking of the Ottoman Empire. And Iran and Arabs, of course, there was a Shia-Sunni divide that was there. So it was only natural for them to be friends with Israel. So that's how they forged a friendship with Israel at that point in time. And that is where we see very hilarious phenomena, that there is an intelligence sharing happening between Iran and Israel. Iran's Savak intelligence forces were working very closely with Israel's Mossad. So there was a good understanding between the two, because the main idea was to contain the Arabs. So that's how the friendship had evolved. Now, as soon as the Islamic Revolution of 1979 takes place, that is where the game changes. Now, 1979 Islamic Revolution, there are two things that had already preceded this revolution. One is that in 1964 itself, there was a PLO formation, which means that it was already understood, or beginning to understand, the world community was beginning to understand that the Arabs are losing out on the Arab-Israel conflict. They are fighting the Israelis, but they are losing out. So in that sense, there is a PLO formation, which will be the which will handle the reins of the Palestinian cause. So 1964 PLO formation is already taken place. The second thing that happened, and which is very important, is the Camp David Accord was signed in 1970. Camp David Accord was a peace agreement that was forged between Egypt and Israel. So Egypt, which was the precursor of war, which was the country responsible to bring in all the Arab countries together to fight against Israel, had already signed a peace treaty with Israel, which was very much, so because of this, it was very much clear that the reins are going to be in the hands of Palestinians. Arabs are weakened. So this is the time when Iran, Islamic Iran, can take over Jerusalem. Now, one very important thing one has to understand, and which is not discussed in the open domain, is that religiously speaking, theologically speaking, Jerusalem has no relevance for Iran. In Shia understanding, there is no relevance of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the third holiest place in the understanding of Sunni doctrine, not in the Shia doctrine. Shia doctrine and its book of tradition, which is called as the Bihar al-Anwar, it talks about, it quotes Prophet Muhammad saying that the Prophet did not believe in the overzealous pilgrimage, which means that Prophet Muhammad had forbidden his followers to go and visit these three centers. So for them, Shia Islam, it is the Najaf, Karbala, and the Kufa, which are more important, which are the sites of the Imams. They are the followers of 12 Imams. So it is about Ali and Hussein. It is not about Prophet. So religiously speaking, in the Shia doctrine, there is no relevance of Jerusalem. So why do you talk about the freedom of Jerusalem? One has to ask that question. And second question that you have to ask is, why are you calling about the safeguarding of or saving the Al-Aqsa mosque, which is again a Sunni mosque. It is not a Shia mosque. So this picture that you see is a picture of a tunnel, and this it's written in Arabic and written by Hezbollah. Hezbollah has dug 6 tunnels in Israel, and on the walls they have inscribed these things, and it translates to, "O Jerusalem, we are coming." Hezbollah, a Shia outfit, is saying that Jerusalem, we are coming, and Jerusalem is not even relevant for Shias, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that the call for the freedom of Jerusalem or call for the freedom of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a political motive. It is not a religious motive for Iran. So basically, when we talk about Israel and Iran, it is not Israel-Iran, it is Iran and Saudi. Because what Iran had thought in 1979 is, because they were creating an axis of resistance. So according to that axis of resistance was mostly for the control of the Sunni authorities. So which means that what they are saying is that if we have the control of Jerusalem, then the Saudi legitimacy of Sunni Islam is going to be lesser in the region than us. If we control the Jerusalem, which means that we are going to be controlling the Saudi dominance and the Hashemite dominance, Jordanian dominance over Jerusalem. We will dictate whether the Sunni Muslims can come to Jerusalem or not. So that is the idea. So, and why? Because it is Israel which is taking care of the security atmosphere or the security aspect of Jerusalem. That's why they are fighting the Israelis. Now, once we have established that, and I already said that 1979, there were 2 things that had already happened, which is 1964 PLO formation, 1978 the Camp David. Now we come to the how Iran develops itself around Jerusalem, how it develops its axis of resistance against Israel, say around, against the Sunni Arabs. So in 1982, few years down the line after the revolution, in 1982, they formed the Hezbollah. Hezbollah is already founded, so which means it is going to be a proxy to Iran. The second thing that happens is, and which gives legitimacy to Iran in Jerusalem, is that Intifada broke out. Intifada was what? Intifada was the Arab uprising against the Israelis' atrocities, so to say, in the Jerusalem area. So what they did was, in 1980, and it came into 2 formats, in 1987 and in 2000s. So at that point in time, this is also the time when Hamas is gaining power in or emerging in the region. So which means that now the Arab dominance has gone, Hamas has taken over, Intifada is going to happen, which means a violent tactic can be employed against the Israelis. And therefore, it is only natural to give support to a Sunni Hamas organization by Iran. And because that is going to strengthen your axis of resistance, which is Hezbollah, which is there in southern Lebanon. So they all can work together and bring down Israel, and over a period of time, they can bring down the Sunni Arabs as well. And at the same time, what happens is that in 1987, Hamas has taken over. 1988 is the time when it was decided in Algiers that State of Palestine can be declared. State of Palestine can be declared through the Palestinian National Council. So when that was decided, it meant that countries who are friendly or who are looking at the cause of Palestinian statehood can start recognizing the State of Palestine. And so did we. We recognized State of Palestine in 1988 itself. So which means that it is clear now that the Arabs are out of Jerusalem, Arabs are out of Palestine. It is only the PLO and the PA which is controlling the State of Palestine, which means it is easier for Iran to take over Palestine. So at the same time, in 1988, you have to see how these years kind of coincide, how Iran is emerging, Iran is kind of strengthening its axis of resistance. So in 1988 itself, Iran forms a force which is called as the Al-Quds force, which is a extension or the extraterritorial offshoot of IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So Al-Quds, we got to know that Hossein Soleimani, he was the commander of Al-Quds force. What is Quds? What is the meaning of Quds? Quds means Jerusalem, which means that this force was developed or imagined to fight against Jerusalem or to liberate Jerusalem. So the Al-Quds force is formed. So now they have strengthened the axis of resistance around Israel. So what I'm saying is here is that the catalysts are the liberation of, the Intifada that broke out and the creation of Hamas and the Al-Quds establishment. Now let's discuss about what happened in this war. I'm sure all of us have followed the war that transpired in June. So what was different in this war? What were the key points in this war? The key point was that it was an aerial war. There was no other service, no other agency that was used in the war. It was an aerial war. 550 ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles were shot between the countries, and many thousands of drones were shot between the countries. Now, this is the time when Israel had used its variants of Arrow 2 and 3, David's Sling, Iron Dome, and also GBU-54, which was supplied by the Americans, the bunker buster bombs, to bomb the nuclear sites, the 3 nuclear sites, especially Fordo in Iran. And Iran, on the other hand, it had used its Bawar 373 air defense systems, its ballistic missiles called as Fatah and Imad, to fight against Israel. But what we have to understand here is that despite all these technologies that the two countries were employing, there was a failure, which means that there will be a reformation in the military technology as well. Because if you look at it, Israel till 1971 was fighting with states, the Arab states. After 2006 it started fighting with the non-state actors, the Hamas and the Hezbollah, which means that it had developed its technology, which was being resistant towards the missiles which are going to be shot from smaller distances, from southern Lebanon or from Gaza. So therefore, Iron Dome made sense. But Iron Dome does not make sense when Iran shots a ballistic missile at you from 1800 miles. It is not going to intercept. So which means that you will have employ better technology, better anti-air defense systems, which can intercept and kind of destroy these ballistic missiles shot from Iran. So what was the result of this war? The war resulted, it was an indecisive. Everybody is a victor in this. Why? Because Israel was able to kind of delay the nuclear program of Iran by many years. It was able to destroy its ballistic missile systems. It was able to destroy its nuclear sites, even though not fully. For Iran, there was no regime change. Both Israel and US called for regime change, but there was no regime change that happened in Iran. And they could withhold the attacks from Israel. Even though if you look at the area of both Israel and Iran is 75 times bigger than Israel. So in that sense, if you look at the destruction that had happened, it may seem that the destructions on Iran were less than what it was in Israel, because the area is smaller. But they were able to withstand this. The third thing that happened was that US, when we talk about US, what happened to US? US was able to kind of have a negotiation with Iran, which was dying down. We already know that why this war was fought is because Iran and US were already in a discussion on the nuclear deal. The 7th round of discussion was already going on in Oman, and it was not going as the way as the Americans wanted it. And at the same time, IAEA had given a report saying that Iran is on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon in weeks' time, months' time, or whatever. That was the reason. But one thing that they do not tell you is that Israel had already destroyed the core capabilities. The Hezbollah was destroyed, capabilities. Hamas was destroyed. And in Syria, the Hezbollah control that was there, the Hezbollah support that was there to the Assad regime, that was also destroyed. So this was the only time they could have gone into this kind of a war way back in October 24, because that was the time when Iran had already fired missiles on Israel. It had fired missiles on Israel in April 24 as well. But they did not fight the war because the time was not conducive. The administration in US was not conducive to what Israel wanted. The Trump administration was more friendlier in terms of Israel's experience. And the other thing that happened was that the Syrian dynamics had changed. So one thing that has happened is that the Syrian regime, the long-standing regime of Syria, which was under the Bashar al-Assad's control, it had fallen and gotten into the control of al-Shara. So that was the main reason. The core that was there, the hostile core that Iran has developed around Israel, it was destroyed. So it was easier for Israel to fire missiles or to bomb Iran. So what were the strategic lessons? Like I said, that there is some kind of revamping, restructuring that is required. And yesterday only, what Iran has done is, because they learned from the battles. So what they have done is, the advisor to the Ayatollah Khamenei, he has been appointed as the Secretary of the National Security Council of Iran, which means it happened yesterday only, which means that they are going to restructure their military architecture, their defense architecture. They are going to upscale their technological advancement, and they are going to probably create infrastructure, because they had already shifted the stockpiles. So they are going to create an infrastructure so that they can again get into war. So this is not the peace time. This is the time when all the three countries are buying some time and revamping to again come to the war front. So this is the In gray zone, this is the peace time. But then it is a time of the narrative warfare that is being fought between the countries. Now, let's talk about what happened in Syria. Like I said, that by December 24, it was clear that Syrian regime under Assad is not getting any kind of support from the Hezbollah, which means that it is going to topple down the HTS, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They are going to take over the reins of Syria. So that is what happened. If you recall, when the Syrian regime was there under al-Assad, it was the time when Iran was supporting the Assad regime. Turkey was supporting the opposition of HTS, and America was supporting the Syrian Democratic Forces, which was a Kurdish force. So if you look at this dynamic, which means that the current regime in Syria is an enemy to Iran, right? But what happened was just that Syria doesn't fall into the laps of Iran. In May 25, when President Trump, he made his first visit after assuming office to the Middle East, in Saudi, he went to Saudi Arabia first. That was the time when he met the president, the interim president of Syria, al-Shara, in Saudi Arabia. And that was the time when he had told him that you should have a peace deal with Israel. So everybody in India also and everywhere else, everybody was like, oh, because we all know the background of al-Shara. Al-Shara was an ISIS fighter. And after that, he joined Al-Qaeda. So which means he's a militant. So everybody, what they said, oh, see, Syria will be the first country now to normalize relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords. But what happened? What is happening right now? What is happening right now? And that's what was intended, because everybody, this region is something wherein any time and every time there is a vacuum, everybody gets in to fill in the vacuum. Everybody wants to have a piece of cake in that region. So right now, it is Turkey, it is Russia, it is Iran also, and it is the Arabs also. Everybody wants to have their piece of share in Syria. So if Syria doesn't fall into the hands of Turkey or in the hands of Iran, that was one of the reasons why Saudi Arabia had fixed this meeting between Trump and the Syrian leader, so that they can have an understanding and they can have a normalization with Israel, which did not happen. Why? Because al-Shara is a Sunni. He is a Sunni. He was a fighter of ISIS. He was a fighter of Al-Qaeda. He is a Sunni. So which means that, and al-Assad regime was a Shia, Alawite, minority. So which means that once he comes to power, he is going to control the Shia majority in the region. So what is he doing? He is committing atrocities against the Jews population that is there. Now, this is a very interesting phenomena, because Druze is a community, minority community, and they are an offshoot of Shia Islam. With them, one thing which is very peculiar to Druze community is that they are loyal to their country of origin. Wherever they are loyal to that particular country. They are loyal to Jordanians, the ones who are living in Jordan. They are loyal to Lebanon, those who are living in Lebanon. They are loyal to Israel, those who are living in Israel. They are loyal in Golan Heights. After 1967, Israel had occupied parts of Golan Heights. So Druze community was living there. But even though Israel has occupied that territory, the Druze community, like I said, they are loyal to the origin, place of origin. They were still loyal to the Syrian regime. But now, since the atrocities in Sweden against the Druze community, because they have all familial ties, we have to understand that all the demarcations of states that has happened in this region, is through the Sykes-Picot Agreement between France and Britain. So which means that it has not taken into consideration the ethnic and the religious minorities in the region. It has just been, states had just been created. So which means that a lot of this Jews living in Israel have families in parts of Syria and parts of Golan Heights. So when this atrocity against the Jews had begun, that was the time when Israel again entered in war with Syria, the regime, the current regime, which means they are not going to be friends as it was understood earlier that they are going to be best of friends, which means the core that Israel was trying to safeguard against Hezbollah, against Syrian regime, which was controlled by Hezbollah, is again becoming hostile. So which means there is no peace in the region again. And a very interesting thing has happened is that Iran has tried to co-opt his enemy, Al-Shara, to be friends with him, join hands against Israel. So this kind of interesting dynamics that you see in the region is already developing. The other alignment that has happened is, I said that Camp David Accord was signed between Egypt and Israel in 1970. Now, a very interesting thing that has happened is that in that Camp David Accord, it was mentioned that the Rafah crossing, the Sinai Peninsula, the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt is going to be demilitarized, which means neither Israel nor Egypt are allowed to militarize that zone. But after the outbreak of this war between Hamas and Israel in October 2023, because Egypt did not want the Hamas to enter its own territory and mess with the peace that is established in Egypt, it militarized the Rafah crossing, which means they had sent their troops to the Rafah crossing, which means that there is a violation of the 1978 agreement, peace agreement that was signed between Egypt and Israel. So which also means that there will have to be a revision of this peace treaties that are signed in the past now, because the militarization has happened. So this is one other thing that has happened. Arabs were sitting at the fence. They did not fight in the war. The only thing that they did was they passed some statements that the war should not be escalated. Now, we know for a fact that the Arabs and the Israelis, even if no formal recognition is there, only few countries like UAE, Morocco, and others have normalized relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords. Others have not. But they have a clandestine relationship between them. A clandestine relationship between them existed. That was one of the reasons why IMEC was envisioned, because IMEC meant that there will be a normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, because both the parties are there in the understanding of IMEC. So Abraham Accord. So what are the Arabs doing then? What happened now after this June war is, for the first time in history, Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Energy has signed MOUs with its European partners on green energy under IMEC. This is the first time when Saudi Arabia has used IMEC word in its official statements. Before that, it was UAE, it was India, it was Israel. Everybody was talking about IMEC except for Saudi Arabia. This is July 25 development, wherein this development has taken place. The second interesting thing that has happened is, for the first time in the history of IMEC, the first IMEC summit was held in Delhi on 5th and 6th of August. There is no news about it. There are only few items which said that American envoy is going to join the meeting. But after that, what was the outcome of this meeting is not there in the public domain. I have read it early morning also, nothing is there. But a meeting happened, and who organized the meeting? The National Security Advisor, NSA, which means that the thing that was being said that IMEC will not have a security commutation is shredded. IMEC will have a security commutation, which means that there will be a security understanding between the partner countries, which means that there will be a security understanding between the Arabs and the Israelis. So that is the development which has happened on IMEC and Abraham Accords. The other thing that has happened is that in the war, during the war, Iran had been emphasizing on two things: axis of resistance and axis of upheaval. Axis of resistance was the forces, the proxy forces which Iran was developing to encircle the Arabs and the Israelis. So axis of resistance did not participate in the June war. That was a very surprising aspect because they were already weakened. Surprisingly, the axis of upheaval, which is a non-formalized kind of nexus between Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea, they did not come to help Iran against Israel. So axis of upheaval did not come to the rescue of Iran during the war. So which means that they are not invested in the security aspect of the region, which means that they are not going to be to be fulfilling the vacuum created by America as a security provider in the region. The other thing that has happened is recently in July, end of July, a UN convention New York convention was formalized by France, UK, Canada, and other countries like Malta and others. So what they said was that this is the time when Palestinian statehood should be given. So what they are saying is by September of 25, which coincides the timing of the UN General Assembly. At that point in time, these countries and few others, 13 other mostly European countries, they are going to recognize the state of Palestine, and that is the only way to end the atrocities in Gaza and to have a two-state solution. But the problem here is, what they have said is that they are going to remove Hamas from Gaza. They are going to reform the Palestinian Authority, and then they are going to give economic prospects to Palestinians to redevelop themselves. But the problem here is, if there is a two-state solution at this point in time, how will it be? The Palestinian Authority, which has control over West Bank, does not have any authority on Gaza. It has tried in the past and many a times to have some kind of authority on Gaza, but they were driven away by Hamas. Hamas leadership, of course, is in Qatar, but the Hamas the ground forces are still there in Gaza, and they are not going to allow the Palestinian Authority to take over Gaza, which means a two-state solution wherein Israel is in between, Gaza administered by Hamas, and West Bank administered by Palestinian Authority cannot be a reality, because which means that there will be continued atrocities against each other. It will be an India, Pakistan, and East Pakistan, West Pakistan kind of a situation, which we do not understand how it is going to translate into. The other aspect which is interesting is the Turkey's regional ambitions. We all know that Turkey under the leadership of Erdogan is no longer Turkey. It is Turkey, which means it is more Turkish in nature, which means that it is talking about the revival of the Ottoman Empire, Neo-Ottomanism. What is Neo-Ottomanism? Which means that they are looking forward to establish the Islamic Caliphate, which means an establishment of Islamic Caliphate means that they are going to be the guardians of Makkah and Medina and not the Saudis. So that is the understanding. So if that is the understanding and they are developing themselves as a new regional power in the region, which means that they are going to fill in all the vacuums that are created in the region. So that's why I said earlier also that Syria, the HTS, which is now in power, has been getting support from Turkey, which means Turkey will also have some kind of investment in Syria, which further means that it will also get embroiled in the war against Israel or Saudi Arabia or the Arabs on Jerusalem. So that is one aspect that we have to look into consideration. Axis of upheaval, I have already talked about, that they did not participate in the war, so to say. The next aspect is how the US pivoting away from the region. That has been a question since the Obama administration, and also in the Trump administration, first Trump administration, followed by Biden, and again, is the US withdrawing from the region? Now, even if US is withdrawing from the region, US has learned its lesson of withdrawals from Iraq and Afghanistan, which means that it is not going to leave the region messy as it had in the earlier times. Because now, if you look at it, US has 30 military bases in the region. It has a lot of investment in the region. Ground troops are there in the region. So if anything happens, that was one of the reasons why there was an abrupt ceasefire in this war. They did not want to escalate the war because the US troops would have gotten attacked by Iran. So what they are doing is they want to avoid the power vacuum in the region this time. And probably, this is my analysis, probably that's the reason why they are investing. If you look at all the accords or all the multi-alignments that are taking place in the region, right from Abraham Accord to IMEC, all of them are brokered by America. Which means even if America wants to pivot away, it wants friendly foreign countries to get invested in the region in terms of development, in terms of economic development in the region, so that a vacuum is not created, so that everybody gets invested in the region and there is an normalization in the region. The other thing that they are looking at is, because if you look at IMEC will be connected with Mahasagar. IMEC will be connected with Sagar. Because IMEC, only one aspect, the Middle Eastern aspect, is land bound. Only the Middle Eastern aspect is inland route. Rest everything is maritime connection. So what they are planning is they are trying to bring the Middle East security in closer connection to the Indo-Pacific alignment that is there. So they're trying to connect the two aspects so that they can look better at the region and not pivot away directly. So that is one of the aspects that they are looking at. Last is the rise of the non-state actors. That is one aspect which is very formidable in the region and very important to understand, because we have seen that earlier it was Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Some of them have been weakened. But now there's a new trend of a tech-savvy non-state actor in the form of Houthis, which have land capabilities as well as naval capabilities. They are something that one has to look at. The second aspect that is there with non-state actors is that the non-state actors are gaining momentum. They are converting into the state actors, such as same as what happened in Afghanistan to Taliban. Similarly, the HTS, an outfit which was regarded as a terrorist organization by some of them, which had connotation of ISIS and Al-Qaeda in it, is gaining the statehood. It is getting formalized and even has the support of the US. So in that sense, this is one critical aspect that one has to look at when we talk about the alignments and the realignments in the region. So finally, what I have to say here is that the region is going to get more complex after this June war. There will be normalization between the Arabs and the Israelis, but we do not know in what sense. And because of the new tensions that are developing between Syria and Israel, we don't know if the core of Israel is going to be safer or not. We don't know if there will be new alignments between Turkey, Syria, and Iran developing against Israel and Saudi Arabia, because if you have to look at the understanding of them, they also have a problem with Saudi Arabia and they have a problem with Israel at the same time. So to control these countries, they may try to have a understanding. The war has already showed that there is a limitation in air power. Air power, aerial wars cannot define the winning aspect of a war. So that is very clear in this war, those aspects. I have already mentioned about the enduring challenges, the challenges of connectivity, that even if there is a connectivity, it will have to have security aspects because Iran is revamping, non-state actors are revamping, treaties will have to be revised, like I said, the Camp David Accord, and there are new realities that are formulating in the region in the form of new countries or new regimes getting traction in the region. So this is what the shifting alliances and realliances will happen in the region in the coming times. Thank you so much.